Blue Runs Deep for some of you coming into this space for the first time. Some of you are repeat attendees to Blue Runs Deep, which is super fun. And I just wanted to warmly welcome everyone. We do it in this format very deliberately as opposed to the webinar, so that part of not only hearing from our 4 esteemed alumni, but that we can also be in community here. So a couple of things in that effort. We would love for you to go over your own image. There are 3 dots in the top right corner if you're on a laptop, and it gives you the option to rename yourself. And if you want to do so with a class year, that would be great, and parent years if that pertains to you. It's really fun to see the distribution of class years across. If that's tricky for you and you're not quite sure how to do it, you can open the chat, which is along the bottom, and you can just tell us. You can just open and you can put it in my name, and you can just tell me what your class year is, and I will, if you could just remind me if you don't mind, and we will fix it for you so we can see all of those good class years. We very much appreciate that folks might be more comfortable with their camera off, but again, because this is an effort in community and fellowship, we love and invite you to keep your camera on if you are so moved. And finally, we have folks here in the Alumni Engagement Office who are going to direct kind of the spotlight and how it moves about. So your best view in the top right corner, again, of your screen is to put it on speaker view, and then we'll drive it from there. You can sit back and enjoy it very much. This is a program that we do with our stars. And so I'm going to get out of the way and turn it right over to Naima, who's going to introduce and open our panel. Thank you so much for being here.
Good evening. Welcome to our alumni, parents, faculty, staff, and students. We're so excited to have you all. My name is Naima Reed. I'm an upper from London. I'm a member of STARS, and I'm here to introduce today's Blue Runs Deep program. The Blue Runs Deep speaker series was launched in 2021 by the Student Alumni Representatives, also known as STARS. We are a group of students interested in connecting with alumni in various ways through programming with the Alumni Office. Today's focus is alumni in TV and film documentary spaces. STARS will post questions that we ourselves have written, and we have also included some questions from attendees who have submitted them as a part of the registration. You will learn from our panelists about their professional path since Andover through the course of this conversation. Many of our questions will be directed towards a single panelist, but we encourage panelists to elaborate on others' responses. We only have an hour together, so we'll jump right in. To introduce our panelists, I would like to welcome Anthony Diaz from the class of 2025.
Thank you so much, Naima. Hello, everybody. My name is Anthony Diaz, and I am an upper from Culver City, California. Our first panelist is Christine Yu from the class of 1986. Miss Yu graduated from the University of Southern California with a degree in cinema television. Miss Yu is an award-winning director, producer, and writer. She released her most recent work this month with fellow Andover alumna and classmate Hella Winson, titled 26.2 to Life, about the marathon inside the San Quentin State Prison. The film has inspired the formation of new prison running clubs, and Miss Yu is writing a book on how to organize a prison running club that will be given away for free to prisons throughout the world. It has sold to ESPN and has nearly won 14 festival awards and a Critics' Choice nomination for the Best Documentary Feature. As a non-fiction series producer, she has produced work for National Geographic, History, Oxygen, and PBS focused on raising up underserviced voices. We welcome Miss Yu here tonight.
Thanks, Anthony. Hi, everyone. My name is Lena Signer-Albanus, and I'm an upper from Tokyo. Our second panelist is Maro Chermayeff from the class of 1980 and a parent from the class of 2021. Ms. Chermayeff graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder with a degree in history and film. She is a multi-Emmy and Peabody-winning film and television producer with work in partnership with HBO, PBS, CNN, A&E, National Geographic, TLC, Travel Channel, Bravo, Discovery, and the BBC, with titles including Hostages, Atlanta's Missing and Murdered, The Lost Children, Turning Oppression into Opportunity for Women Worldwide, and many, many more. Ms. Chermayeff is the founding partner and principal of the global production media company Show of Force. Ms. Chermayeff is also the founder and chairman of the MFA program in social documentary at the School of Visual Arts in New York City, where she both trains and mentors the next generation of documentary filmmakers. We warmly welcome Ms. Chermayeff here tonight.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naomi Mashburn, and I'm from the class of 2008 and work in the Alumni Engagement Office. Our third panelist is Mr. Trey Ellis III, also from the class of 1980. Mr. Ellis graduated from Stanford University, and he is a two-time Emmy and Peabody-winning filmmaker, American Book Award-winning novelist, NAACP Image Award-winning playwright, essayist, and professor of professional practice at Columbia's University's School of the Arts. Most recently, he was an executive producer and interviewer for the Emmy Award-winning HBO documentaries True Justice, Bryan Stevenson's Fight for Equality, and King in the Wilderness. One of his other screenplays include the Peabody Award-winning The Tuskegee Airmen for HBO and Good Fences for Showtime. He's currently in rehearsals for a musical on the life of Dorothy Dandridge, for which he wrote the book and is co-writer of the lyrics. The music has already been performed at Carnegie Hall last summer. We are incredibly thrilled to have Mr. Ellis here tonight as the 2024 Alumni Award of Distinction winner. Congratulations. We welcome Mr. Ellis.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dominique Williams, and I'm a senior from St. Kitts and Nevis. Our fourth panelist tonight is James Longley from the class of 1990. Mr. Longley attended the University of Rochester, the Gorny Institute in Leningrad, Wesleyan University, and the All-Russia Institute of Cinematography in Moscow. Mr. Longley focuses his work on civilians in politically fraught countries. His 2018 film about Afghanistan, Angels Are Made of Light, has a 100% fresh rating by film critics on Rotten Tomatoes and was the New York Times Critics' Pick. He's working on his second feature documentary set in Afghanistan, now about the lives of villagers in the conservative Maidan Wardak province following the Taliban takeover. For Mr. Longley's two Iraq War documentaries, he has been nominated for 2 Academy Awards and an Emmy. He was named a MacArthur Fellow in 2009, a United States Ford Fellow in 2011, and was inducted into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in 2007. We welcome Mr. Longley here to join us in this conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.
Clementine, you're muted, my friend.
Am I muted?
Nope, you're good.
Thank you so much. Our first question will be for Miss Yu. As an independent filmmaker focusing on undeserved voices, your work, including 26.2 to Life, has not just been about storytelling, but also spurred systematic change and influenced public policy. From your perspective, what role do independent films and their makers play in shaping societal attitudes and policies towards marginalized communities? How do you measure the success of your films in terms of their social impact? And what advice would you give to the aspiring filmmakers who aim to use their work as a tool for social justice?
Thank you so much for the question. And of course, it's a delight to be here with everyone. I'll first start out by saying that in terms of social or political impact with the resulting impact of the film, I mean, that wasn't really necessarily a consideration going into the process. What I was excited about and what my team was excited about was this is a great story. This was a really interesting, fascinating way into look at the prison system and the people in it, not through, talking to experts, but through people that are preparing to run a marathon inside the prison. So it was something, of course, that we, as a group kind of fantasized about, like, wouldn't it be cool if, there were prison running clubs, that would start afterwards. But, we didn't think about that really as a practical reality as we were making the film. When we did finish and have started to put it out, we were overwhelmed by the response and all of just the random inbound email that we received from prisons across the country, from runners across the country, people who have had no relationship with the prison or criminal justice system whatsoever, people wanting information about, how do I get involved? How do I volunteer? We want to start a club. So that really, and we also had a screening inside San Quentin itself. So seeing from the, reaction of the population there, the people there, we really decided that it was going to be a priority for us to get it to people in prison, to get it to the communities where it could make a difference. So, how do we measure that difference or those results? For us right now, outside of, the commercial aspects of distributing the film, it really is through the formation of these new running clubs. So there have been 3, new running clubs that have formed directly as a result of people watching the film. One at a prison in Cleveland, a women's facility there. One in the state, another one in the state of California, and one at a San Francisco probation office. And then over the weekend, we just found out that there's a new club in the works at a maximum security facility in Colorado. So these are, organically happening, actually, without much, prompting from us at all, except for, presenting the film. So of course, that's been incredibly gratifying. And we also, decided, because of the potential, we did form like what you would call like a social impact advisory board or council that helped us to reach out to people who work in state government in the state of California to be able to present the film to legislators, to the governor's office, et cetera, to the parole board. So that people can hopefully get a different understanding of, what life is like inside for people who are facing life sentences and what they need to do to get out. So, but again, we were most excited just about telling this great story, and the fact that it's having this kind of impact is, that's something that you dream about, and something that that my team were very excited to see how long this tale, it is going to be, this unexpected, winding journey. So, I think in that respect, documentary filmmaking is a wonderful medium to try to get across new ideas and concepts. But I became interested in storytelling because I was a Korean American girl from Iowa and Memphis, Tennessee. Didn't see a lot of people who looked like myself on, in anything, anywhere. Or if I did, they were horrible stereotypes. So that really propelled me a lot. So it really kind of came down to, well, this idea of being the change that you want to see, and putting, those stories and crafting those stories and putting them out there. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you, Ms. Yu, for your response. Hello, everyone. My name is Maddie Redmond, and I'm an upper from Memphis, Tennessee. This next question is for Ms. Chermayeff. This year, we are celebrating 50 years since Andover and Abbott became a singular school. You have invested so much into teaching and supporting future filmmakers and raising up women's voices and stories in your work. Although you graduated from Andover 6 years after Abbott and Andover became a singular school, can you share how Abbott's motto of "She holds aloft a burning torch" resonates in the work you do today?
It's interesting because by the time I got to Andover, I don't think I really I didn't see Andover and Abbott as separate in any way. So to me, I think the motto that sort of drove me more was the non-SIBI motto, but in the sense of understanding whether it was in a great academic institution like Abbott, or how people, it's about women's recognitions and women finding their voices and women being understood as the change makers they are. And in my own work, I have done an enormous amount in and around the women and girls space, mostly inspired by Nicholas Kristof, the writer from the New York Times, who I partnered with many years ago when he was still in the galleys, in the process of writing his book Half the Sky, Turning Oppression into Opportunity for Women Worldwide. And probably together we've traveled over the course of 4 series together, for television, for PBS, for public media. We've probably been to, about 30 countries together, and done things I never thought I would do, in the effort of raising awareness and having more people understand what is going on, not only for women and girls, but in huge and challenging issues in developing countries around the world. So one of the things I was thinking as Christine was speaking is that we actually, when we created Half the Sky as a television series, and what that would be, simultaneously developed a very, very intentional social media platform that was intended to drive change and to bring eyeballs and to find people from different kinds of bring people to the media in different kinds of ways. As Nick used to always say, sort of reach beyond the choir, find people that weren't looking at this kind of material or thinking about these kinds of issues, and then focus very intently on not just having the awareness piece, which would be, you can see the parts of the series and you can learn something, but how do you actually create behavior change through content and media? And we spent a lot of time and many, many years focusing on that. And we did it by, we did mobile games in India and Africa, and we did a very large Facebook game all about women and girls, all in partnership with Ford Foundation. And we were, making content for television, and we were making pieces that ranged, really commonly now you guys are all watching your media in very short clips. We, this was a 4-hour series, but we probably made 250 clips that ranged anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes and to sort of began to understand how people were consuming media and how that was changing at this time. So there are a lot of projects, I think, that we all get involved with where you accidentally see that, they can change laws and change lives. And then sometimes you're actually really trying to draw people in to make those changes happen, and to make people know about people and places that they've never been, and measure that. What is measurable change? So how do you measure that? And how do you see? It's not just how many people watched. In the old days, it was just like the Nielsen ratings. Okay, well, this is on Netflix. How many people are watching? How many people? But it can actually go much deeper to understand and to try to understand the impact of the content you're creating, and whether or not that content can drive behavior change and make, in our effort, people have better lives or more opportunity or more, more political shifts. So I think that documentary is not just a tool, it's an art form. So you have to sort of see both things, that it is, I agree with it entirely. It is about finding great stories and telling those stories and realizing that even the most specific information that you want to, get across to somebody is best absorbed if you can relate, if you see characters and people and places that you can see yourself or you can understand and empathize. And from that spins the next set of choices. So I think, documentary has a job, but it's also something that just has to be great storytelling. But tracking it and seeing how it affects people's lives is very rewarding.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Chermayeff. Hello, everyone. My name is Kylan Lee, and I am a senior from Reading, Massachusetts. Our next question is for Mr. Ellis. How does your storytelling in writing carry over to filmmaking? And in communicating a message, do you err towards humor or drama, given your body of work to date?
Those are great questions, and thanks everybody here. I like to think that storytelling is storytelling. I started my first writing actually at Andover, writing short stories, and then wrote my first book coming out of Stanford. And my first quotes for the book were from Alexander Through, who's my Andover professor, one of my first quotes. And then I moved into film and television and then documentaries and plays later. I always see it as storytelling and storytelling from the beginning. So I think about the tools of storytelling that Maro and Christine are talking about here. It has to be effective in that way. So I think of how do you communicate what I want to communicate, and how do I get the effect that I want from my readers or my audience? And then it's the question of what form it takes is pretty easy. And some of my stories will begin one way and then end up something else, or they can write it as a documentary about something, then make something fiction and fictionalize it. But at the core, it's like the story I'm trying to tell and the effect I'm trying to get from the people. In terms of comedy or drama, I began as thinking of myself as more of a comedy writer. I ended up writing a lot of more serious pieces, and then now I'm to the point that I like talking about life. And to me, hopefully your life isn't just a tragedy, and it's probably not just a straight comedy either. I think that all good storytelling, I would venture to say, has some elements of both.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ellis. Our next question is for Mr. Longley. Your work is in war-torn countries with incredibly political and humanitarian upheaval. Has your work ever brought you into imminent danger? How did you navigate those situations? And by extension, how do you identify trusted local film crews and on-the-ground support in these countries?
Thank you for the questions. I've thought about this question a lot, actually. Because all my work has been in conflict zones, starting in the Gaza Strip 23 years ago, and then continuing on into Iraq, and then I was in Iran, then Pakistan for years and years, and then finally Afghanistan, and now I've spent 4.5 years of my life in Afghanistan. So I think a lot about how not to get killed. But the truth is that I've been through all these places, and I don't have a scratch on me, and I don't really have anything to complain about. The truth is that the cultures in these countries, people are really nice, super hospitable. And the big danger, like in a country like Iran, is that you would just eat too much tasty food, and you'd become fat, overweight, and this is the big danger. I mean, people don't realize how amazing the people are in these countries, and how much safer you are with them sometimes than you would be with Americans. I think the people I've always worked with a really small crew, like it's just me doing the camera, and sometimes like in Iraq the microphone's also on the camera, and then I always work with a local producer and sometimes a driver. So it's just me and like one or two other people. And we try to really keep a low profile. But, it's really those other people who the local producers in Afghanistan and Iraq and Gaza who keep me safe. And those are also the people who take on the most risk, it has to be said. Like, it's not me. I can always tap out. Like, if I'm in Gaza, I'm making a documentary, I can always say, well, I'm done filming and I'm out of money and now I'll just leave, right? Whereas the people I'm working with can't leave. And the same thing is true in Afghanistan and Iran and all these other places. Although many of the people I've worked with have left those countries subsequently, the risk is always much higher for them, for the local people. And I think and we can see that right now with what's going on in Gaza. Obviously, the most dangerous place to be a journalist is in the Gaza Strip, and all those journalists who are getting killed now, which is the most journalists of any conflict ever, are getting killed with American weapons. You know what I mean? So it's not, there's a kind of narrative where it's like we're going out into these dangerous places and doing this dangerous work. And, but the truth is when you're in Iraq or Afghanistan, or especially in a place like Gaza, quite often the case is that, that we are the danger, actually. To paraphrase Breaking Bad, if you like. Often, I think right now the United States and our allies have become the most dangerous people for journalism. And I hope that will change in the future. That's, I guess, what I have to say about that.
Thank you, Mr. Longley. Our next question is for Miss Yu. What connections did you make from filming 26.2 to life in a San Quentin State Prison? Do you still keep in touch to the best of your ability to any of the inmates that you filmed?
Yeah, great question. Yes, I do. The film was made totally independently, so it took almost 6 years actually to complete, and a lot of that obviously had to do with we were wanting to go into the prison, not all at one time, but over a while, to track these guys. But I went in there a lot when cameras were not rolling. We went in there as much as we could to get to know people for really who they are, not just collect sound bites, for an hour type of thing. So, in that process, I feel, I actually really became a part of the San Quentin community at large. And when principal photography was over, I would still go into the prison, and I, would continue to run with the club, go to workouts, and run with the guys. During one of my runs, one of the guys had basically approached me and was like, hey, it was my dream to be a director. Would you consider helping me? So yes, of course. So I ended up getting a security clearance, and I became a volunteer, and I still am at the prison's media center. And from there went on to produce short films for some of the guys, help them get their first films off the ground. We got some Sundance grants and Marshall Project, et cetera, and help to have these guys, really tell their stories. I would bring in also other people from the outside, other film professionals. We conducted a lot of workshops, that kind of thing. And also during that time, what ended up happening is how that impacted the making of this film too, that I just finished. All of the music, for example, is all by currently or formerly incarcerated guys. All of the tracks were produced inside the prison. And the film composer himself was somebody that I met while he was still locked up. He then got out, and then that actually was able to facilitate a real collaboration. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have like a real collaboration just because of the way clearance works at the prison. And it continues to be a really important part of my life. And I guess along with that now, within just kind of the larger state of California, as there are more media centers being introduced in other prisons. And also now I'm creating with the coaches of this club, we're creating like this how to form a prison running club handbook. And that's actually going to be distributed by the Department of Corrections. We received a grant to create the book. But we just want to give it away as a free resource. So now I'm involved with training some of the Department of Corrections people about the tie between within rehabilitation of athletics and rehabilitation. And so had no idea that actually it would kind of spin off into this tale of the film, but it's been incredibly gratifying. And yes, so in a lot of ways, I mean, I spend a lot of time, I'm actually here in the Bay Area right now because I was just at San Quentin yesterday. So yeah, it continues to be a very important part of my life and something that I just really enjoy. And I think something that also kind of goes back to something that I learned at Andover in terms of service to the community, the idea of non-civi and, being a part of the community and helping to shape community and contributing to it. And this idea that, every one of us can make a difference, even in the face of something so entrenched as the prison system.
But I just wanted to add to that, even when you make, at this point, getting old, dozens of films, the relationships that you build making films, whether that's with the people that you're working with and your colleagues to the people that are subjects in your films, these are very, very genuine relationships that last a lifetime. And sometimes you're really frustrated that you can't, rescue people that maybe need more support than just your film is going to be able to offer them, and they've given you so much by opening themselves up to you. But I think that there's a trust that builds between documentarians and subjects, and that most of the people that I know in our orbit of work are people that really, really care about other people and other issues and things that are going on in the world, and the relationships that they forge are very genuine and last a lifetime. Maybe not in the everyday way that they do when you're making a film, but I think that they continue and they resonate. And I communicate with so many people that have been in subjects in my films, and I cherish those relationships.
I think that's just kind of the upside in general of being in the media industry. And, I mean, we're people who work on our project-based, types of work. So, those relationships that you make on each project, I mean, because you get into these situations where you work very intensely, with people side by side. It's like you are, you're going to battle, so those relationships that you make in the trenches, they have a lot of texture and nuance, and you continue to carry those with you throughout your life, like going to Andover,
Yeah.
Those relationships that I made with people in Bancroft, they're still some of my best friends today. So it's all about relationships and being a part of a community.
Thank you, Miss Yu and Miss Chermayeff. Hello, everyone. My name is Michaela McVeigh, and I'm a senior from Austin, Texas. Our next question is for Miss Chermayeff. You have a classmate here with you today from the class of 1980. It feels like there was something infectious and inspiring among you and your classmates to become such successful filmmakers. Are there any particular challenges or moments in your journey at Andover or beyond that you think our students should know or learn from?
I think that, when this is probably not something I thought of at the time, but I think that the ability to just risk and fail is a really important part of when you start to do things when you're younger. the reality is that when you're, if I think about like the projects or things that I did at Andover, the partnerships, and I've worked with many, many people from Andover since that time, professionally, is going back to that point, and I talk about it with my own graduate students, which is making mistakes. Try things that don't work. Things that don't work are just as valuable as the things that work perfectly the first time. So I think that part of that, I would say Andover was probably, and Trey can confirm, a little bit loosier, a little bit loosey-goosier in our time than it is for some of you and this era. And I say this, my daughter was in the class of 21, where there was a kind of a certain kind of a driving pressure to do everything right the first time. And it's just life isn't really like that. And when I was at Andover, we just messed up all the time. And those were things that I think about. And most, of course, I usually think about them like laughing my head off, because there are so many funny things happen with so many people. But I think that that's probably the biggest thing in my time at Andover, was that I tried all sorts of things. You don't have to know the answer. You don't have to be a lower at Andover and know that you want to be like a cardiologist. You don't, it's like, it doesn't, things change, and you have to be able to have those experiences and have the experiences change you. And that happens in documentary film all the time, which I often say is like a little mini master's degree. Like every film is a master's degree. I can tell you an enormous amount about all of the things that I've ended up making films about, and it becomes it's very rewarding to keep an open mind. And when you make a film, it often pivots. It often starts as one thing and it becomes something else. Like even Trey was talking about, maybe it started out as a comedy, but it became a melodrama, and that's something that you have to sort of open yourself up to, I think, in work and life, is that things that aren't always as you plan them are really good and positive things. And it seems not so when you're 19 or you're 18, you're like, ah! And in fact, all of the lessons, good and bad, come back to inform you and to help you to grow up and to form stronger bonds and to find your values and to invest in things and people that are meaningful and life-altering. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Go mess up. It's my go make a mess of something. It's always a good thing to do.
Our next question is for Mr. Longley. Can you describe your best moment in the field doing research for one of your films? Did the moment of discovery make it into the film, or was it just a personal highlight for you?
Well, so I'll just continue from what Maro was saying, because that's totally true, that you should mess up, and you should be able to mess up quite a bit. Like like when I went to Afghanistan, it wasn't my first attempt to make that film. I had this idea to make a school-based film when I was in Iraq, and I took that idea to Iran, and in Iran, in the end, the film was stopped by the Green Uprising that happened around the 2009 elections, and so I moved the project to Pakistan, and I was in Pakistan then for another year. And then there was a huge scandal between the Pakistani and United States governments, that only Pakistani people remember, called the Raymond Davis incident. And also they wound up kicking all the foreign journalists out of the country, all the American journalists. And so I'd gone through 2 years of attempting to make this film and not being able to make it, first in Iran and then in Pakistan. And I finally took it to Afghanistan and stayed in Afghanistan for the next 3.5 years making the film. And so it just became this odyssey to make this movie. that I thought was going to be something really simple and easy to make and not at all controversial. And it wound up just taking forever. And in the end, even though it was so well reviewed by everyone, it was never distributed. Like no one ever saw this movie. You always think, okay, especially you making films about a conflict zone, like for example, the Iraq War or something like that. And it's disappointing when you're making these films because you think, well, the war has already started. It's obviously a huge mistake that everyone is going to regret in the future. And there's kind of nothing you can do about it as a documentary filmmaker at that point, except document it and document what happens and amplify the voices of people who would otherwise not be heard and so on. But there's this dream that you could actually make a film that would have an impact before something happened, in a way, like that you would somehow that you would tell people what was going to happen, and you would be able to somehow like caution the audience about don't be careful about where you're going. And documentaries, they take so long to make that generally speaking there's no way to do that, especially with the conflict of war, and wars spring up, situations happen, and there's no time to make a film about it before it's already happening. But in Afghanistan, I thought, I can see what's going to happen already, 10 years in the future, because I can see that the government that we've installed is extremely unpopular and incompetent. I can see that the Taliban is gaining strength. I can see that the United States isn't going to stay in Afghanistan. And with all these things together, I could see years in advance that the Taliban was going to come back to power and take control of Afghanistan again. And so I included that in my movie. I have all these people saying, that the Taliban is going to come back, and the future of Afghanistan is Islamic rule, and all of this. And I thought, this is it. Like I have the thing before it happens. Now I can warn everybody about the inevitable future of Afghanistan, about this Taliban takeover that's happening. And I finished that film in 2018, 3 years before the Taliban takeover. But what I discovered is that, like, if you tell people about something that hasn't happened yet, you're just like a crazy man with a cardboard sign, like standing by the side of the freeway, right? Because it's just like no one will take you seriously. And in a way, like if you want to tell somebody something, you kind of like you have to get the timing right. Like you have to be right there at the right time when they're ready to hear that thing, because like the American public weren't ready to hear that their war in Afghanistan was for nothing, and that they were going to replace the Taliban with the Taliban essentially at the cost of all these lives and all of this money. Like Americans weren't ready to hear that. And I think there's there's a certain strategy also that has to happen. This is getting away from your question, but I hope it's a useful observation, which is, documentary film really is about communication, and it's this really complicated dance where you're out there with a kind of unfolding reality that's happening and a desire simultaneously to tell people about this reality that you're discovering. But it's also about not only whether you can make the film, but whether you can make it at the right time and release it in the right way that will actually reach its audience and sort of land. And that's something that, I'm still now on my fourth feature documentary in a war zone. Like I'm still learning this strategy. This is getting away from your question entirely, but I was going to say that the most it's not a moment, but rather like a whole series of moments of these long mistakes that you can make, where you go to a country or you try to make a film and for whatever reason it doesn't work out, something maybe completely unrelated to the project. Like you're still, as Maro said, like each one that you do, it's still like this master's degree program. You still learn so much. Like I had this opportunity to live in a mountain village in Iran for over a year, and who gets that? Like what, how many Americans can have that experience? I think what documentary film does for you is it gives you this excuse to explore the world, and like find out about all these things that you may be curious about. And even if you fail in the film, you'll still wind up with this kind of treasure trove of life experience. It's really, I can't imagine like having a real job like after making documentaries, because this is the career that is actually freeing, where you get to continue learning specifically about the things that interest you in this really intensive way long after you finish university, right? Like to the end of your life, you could be living in these different intensive journeys of discovery that you take on. And it's something that you do for yourself. Like nobody hires you to be a documentary filmmaker like out of college. Like you have to, it's a job that you have to give yourself and kind of invent for yourself. And after you've made films successfully for a while, maybe then people actually pay you to do it. Anyway, so that's my long-winded response to a short question.
Thank you, Mr. Longley. That was fascinating. Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Lord, and I'm a senior from New York City. Our next question is for Mr. Ellis. Your most recent focus is on your musical about the life of Dorothy Dandridge. Can you share what inspired you to take up this work and what the process for orchestrating such a project looks like?
Yeah, it was a big, I began my career, again even in Andover. I remember in Andover sending like short stories to the New Yorker that were of course rejected. So I just thought of myself as a writer, a fiction writer. And then as I moved to television, then when I moved to New York from California, I migrated into writing some plays. And then somebody had just approached me about writing a musical about Dorothy Dandridge, who you probably don't know who she is, but she was this wonderfully influential and beautiful Black actress. She was the first Black woman to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for this film called Carmen Jones. And then she had a kind of tragic kind of parallel to Marilyn Monroe kind of downfall. And if you know, like Halle Berry, her first, she made an HBO movie called Introducing Dorothy Dandridge, and that's the movie that sort of launched Halle Berry's career. But I thought there was some space for this to make a musical. People came to me though they'd already hired someone else to write a musical. They didn't like that version. And they asked me if I wanted to write the book. And musicals, if you don't know, there's like the book, which is like the words of the musical, and then there's also the obviously the music and the lyrics. So I said, oh, I'll write the book. I wrote actually the book I've written plays before. I wrote a play actually about the Tuskegee Airmen after writing that HBO movie about them, and another play. But then they asked me about writing who would write the lyrics. And it's funny because I'm not a musical person. I never thought about writing poetry. But it occurred to me, like, I like saying yes to things. I like trying new things. So I just said, screw it. I'm just going to I'll take a stab at writing these lyrics and see what happens. So I ended up writing lyrics. So I like to challenge myself to write newer and newer forms. Just write new. And I wrote a fictional podcast a couple of years ago. Regular plays, anything that's written, I just like telling stories in some kind of new way. So the short answer is I just like trying to say yes and I just tried. So like for writing the lyrics, for example, I would Google like how do you write lyrics? What does it look like in a song? I was not really a musical theater kind of person, a more regular theater person, but I looked at the musicals I really liked a lot. I started sort of taking them apart. And as someone who's been in the arts for so long and has been teaching for so long, it was really fun to be a beginner again and to start from the beginning and try to say, what can a musical do that regular theater can't do? The other thing I just want to add to what Maro and James were saying about making documentaries as well, I think that the kind of happy accidents, the improvisational part of it, which I love, because coming from writing fiction and television and movies, you really write the thing first, and there's not as much wiggle room later as you start shooting. But the idea for the two docs that I made, we had a writer who wasn't me, who did a lot of research. We had questions we were going to ask people. We had a basic framework for a story, and we started shooting. But obviously, the best parts were being open to the happy accidents. And then I think the idea we're making documentaries differently than let's say news, because I actually worked at a magazine called Newsweek, which doesn't exist anymore when I first got out of college. But the doing journalism, you're just trying to get the story done, and it's disposable. You don't go back unless you're doing research later to read some old newspaper articles about this piece. But in making documentaries, I really felt the weight of trying to take my storytelling skills and to make something that would hopefully be more timeless. As James says, I think, James, don't despair about your films, even if they're not out there yet, because I think if they're good stories, you don't know when they're going to come back around again. I was just in teaching in Spain at a script consulting, and the director of this wonderful movie about abortion in Romania called 4 Months, 3 Days, and 2 Weeks. You might have seen, won an Academy Award. It's a fiction film. He made it 20 years ago about Romania and trying to get an abortion 40 years ago. And so now we are talking about it now, and it's more, obviously, for an American audience, it's more relevant today than ever. So you just never know, really. I think if the story is good, you can find an audience again. So don't despair. I think if you've done something and it maybe doesn't land right away, there's that long tail, the famous long tail. I think that can.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think we both know that in this business you have to be the eternal optimist. Otherwise, you just can't continue.
And I'll say that my professor at Andover, Alexander Theroux, who you probably haven't heard of, his brother's Paul Theroux, a more famous writer. He just said, I'm just satisfied knowing that I just think I'll be famous after I'm dead. And what I like about that is that you might be right or might be wrong, but it's like at least you'll die like with a smile on your face, thinking that after you die, you'll get your just desserts.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot also, and it seems to me that in many cases, the artificial intelligence may be the main audience member for these works.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
We'll be training the algorithm.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. I especially think that kind of just writing and challenging yourself is amazing. And I think all of the uppers here writing our 10-page history paper can relate to challenging ourselves to writing big things and new things for us. And our next question is for everyone on the panel. As Andover alumni, you each have taken the Andover mottos of youth from every quarter and non-civi, as Miss U has, from kind of engaging with the community to propel your work and your missions. Mr. Ellis just mentioned his English teacher, but we were just wondering how many Andover teachers, staff, house counselors, or friends fueled your passions, and how did they shape who you are today?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there were a lot of great teachers in my time at Andover that I really loved. I mean, and people and things that I was really bad at, like my French teacher, Mademoiselle Barat, was a French resistance fighter. She weighed about she was about the size of my pinky. She was like this tiny little firebrand, and I was terrible at French, and she was always telling me, you may not be good at French, but you're good at other things. And, there were just then, Mr. Bernieri, who's I think still at school, was such an interesting person. And Mark Hunter, do you remember? I mean, Mark Hunter was there at our time, very young, very interesting, kind of wild card. I think he may have even been like a fellow of some kind at that time. He wasn't a full teacher, but there were just so many great people. But I also think, very importantly, and I think Christine was mentioning it as well, the relationships with my friends, the friendships that I made at Andover in a very brief period of time, are the friends of my life and my professional life. I mean, as I've mentioned before, I've worked with many many people, my very, very closest friends, are my friends from Andover, like, that I talk to every day. And I think that part of that is the incredibly heady period of that time in your life. But I also think it's the kind of, it is the environment that Andover inspired was a kind of intensity of, focused and interest and people. And those friendships they stuck with me then, and I live with them forever.
Yeah, one teacher that really made an impact on me was Ada Fan. And a class I took by her I think it was like images of women. Maybe it was in film or in literature, but we watched a lot of movies that are some of my favorite movies. I was just talking about the film Coming Home that I was like just exposed to in her class. And of course, her being Asian American, that will also, I felt, there was a special affinity that I had. I was very active in the music program as well. I was a pianist and in studio art, and having the opportunities just to experiment, in all different kinds of disciplines, from, having as much canvas as you want, and it was free. I mean, of course, it wasn't free for my parents, but free for me while I was there. And just having that amazing resources to open up your mind and your creative space to just try everything. So I did a lot of studio art while I was at Andover. And I did like a special senior project. I remember my last trimester, which was like a crazy project where we were like, we're going to create a painted environment. And we posted it up. It was like on that stage right outside of GW. We created these like 4 walls or whatever, and that was an amazing experience. But I will add that Hella Winston from my class from '86, she was the first person I called when I decided to undertake this project, actually. And she's not necessarily was in the film industry, but she was a reporter, journalist focused on a lot of criminal justice cases. And I was like, I could not think of a person that I would want to, invest years of my life to, work side by side with and like dig in and actually really have fun doing this. Because the thing about documentary films, especially independent ones, there is no money involved for a long time. So I would rather be in the trenches with somebody that I love to hang out with, and the thing about documentary films is that, like everyone was saying earlier, there's sort of no wrong way to go, and if you feel like maybe you're taking a wrong turn, eventually that will end up being the right turn some way, and it's that having that hope, that optimism that you're gonna, be able to move forward. And I will also add that a lot of my classmates from the class of '86 have just really been very active in my life in terms of supporting the projects that I've done, showing up at film festival screenings. It's that's always the big bonus of making anything and being able to travel with the film at different film festivals and reconnecting with all of your classmates. It's a great thing. So
was Diz Bensley still there when you were in '86 and '90, like Diz and Audra, Mr.
wait,
Bensley?
I'm sorry, who?
Diz Bensley and Audra Bensley, in the art department. Yeah.
Yes.
They were like incredible.
Yes.
And of course, Kelly Wise, I forgot, of course, that novel and drama. And
yeah. But that, I mean, hey,
Kelly
that's the
Wise was so
amazing thing about Andover is that there's so many different things. I wasn't involved with film at all. I got involved with film pretty late, compared to a lot of people, I think. But you know, having different artistic disciplines, I always knew I wanted to do something artistic, but I thought I was going to kind of go more in the visual art space. Having all of those resources and a supportive environment to create in is just, you know, something that I cherish.
Yeah, I don't know if they still offered it, but I had a creative writing class with this Alexander Theroux, like for a high school to have a creative writing class was rare. So I learned so much in that class from my friends and from the professor that still now that so many years later that I'm teaching, I bring up lessons that I learned about what things to do and not do from that very first class. And I also think from being at a school where I think, because it's so selective, I think that if you have a crazy dream, no one says, that's crazy. They encourage you to say, are you going to go? I want to fill a hot air balloon and circumnavigate the globe and say, okay, well, what are you going to do? Like, let's figure it out. Like, and I've never been, it's a rare place. So I still think that's been super helpful to me.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to the Quattlebaums, Ruth Quattlebaum and Ed Quattlebaum, who I was my work study I was doing I worked in the library with Ruth Quattlebaum, who was the archivist, and her husband was the head of the history department, and I took his class in nuclear proliferation. And I remember this, I was always interested in international affairs, but this was for me like a pretty great course, and to have such a weighty topic taken so seriously in high school was, of course, pretty great. And I can't honestly say that was the thing that started my interest in international affairs and so on, but it was definitely one of those courses that was formative for me in high school, and thinking about what was important and what I should be focused on in life, for sure.
Thank you so much for answering our question. Yeah, definitely for me, I think, Andover has definitely been an incredibly formative place. And I know that the things that I take from here will definitely, I guess, influence like the things I do going forward, and like the different ideas I have and just things that I've considered differently since coming from this place. Thank you all so much
Do you
as
know
well.
where do you know where you're headed next?
I don't. I thought I did, but then factors change, so I don't. But fingers crossed, I'll find out soon. And wherever it is, I know that because I've been at Andover, like the experience will be great. Yes, I want to thank you guys so much for, I guess, spending your time. On behalf of the entire Andover community, we are so beyond grateful to all of our alumni panelists for their time tonight. Joshua Oppenheimer, the great American filmmaker known for The Act of Killing, said, "We all identify with the people we see, and in a good documentary, we are not just reading an account of the world, we're hearing and seeing our world." As high school students, we are inspired today by your stories of bravery, creativity, and helping us see the world beyond our immediate sightlines. We are so grateful to hear about your journeys since leaving our shared home here at Andover. I will now turn it over to Mrs. Savino, who will close us out of today's session.
I will say thank you, and I think I will just sit in Dominique's beautiful words and add nothing else. Thank you very much for being together this evening. Take good care.
Thank
Good job, Dominique.
Thank you so much for having me. It just means a lot to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks
It
so
was
much.
great to meet all of the people.
Good luck to everybody.
No, you too. I want to look at all your work.
Exactly.
And
All
Maro,
right.
I'll see you in New York, I'm sure.